"Stop! Thief!" The words cracked like a whip across the polished stone sidewalk, loud enough to turn heads and freeze Malik Carter mid-step. His heart skipped. The voice belonged to Edward Langley, a man whose tailored suit and sharp glare spoke of power money and a life Malik could barely imagine. Minutes earlier, Malik had been wandering near the entrance of an upscale restaurant, hungry eyes skimming the world for dropped coins or leftover scraps. That's when he saw it, a black leather wallet, glossy under the afternoon sun, lying just inches from the door. He picked it up slowly, fingers brushing the smooth surface, imagining the kind of life where a wallet wasn't empty. But before he could speak, the restaurant door swung open. Edward strode out, spotted the wallet in Malik's hands, and exploded with accusation. In that instant, Malik wasn't a boy who had simply found something. He was a suspect, a target. The misunderstanding would ripple far beyond that sidewalk. In a city where the poor are invisible until accused, Malik's next steps could mean sinking into a system that devours boys like him or discovering a strength even he didn't know he had. Malik Carter had never been a stranger to loss. At 10 years old, the world he knew vanished in a screech of tires and shattering glass, a drunk driver taking both his parents in a single night. The foster system became his new reality, shuffling him from house to house, each move stripping away another piece of his trust. By 16, he'd learned the unwritten rules of the streets: keep your head down, don't draw attention, and never expect fairness. He carried his belongings in a worn backpack, slept under overpasses when shelters overflowed, and survived on whatever he could find. But even in this hardened life, his kindness was stubborn. Once he gave his last piece of bread to a crying little girl in the park, telling her it tasted better than it did. The city saw him as another shadow, and Malik had made peace with that until now. This accusation wasn't just about a wallet. It was about the ugly assumptions that followed his skin, his clothes, and his lack of address. Standing on that sidewalk, his voice trembled but didn't break. "I just found it." He stammered, eyes locked on Edward's. "I didn't steal." For once, he refused to be silent. The moment Edward Langley's words hit the air, the city's invisible gears began to turn against Malik. Within minutes, a patrol car slid to the curb. 2 officers stepped out, one jotting notes, the other keeping a hand close to his belt. Malik's pulse hammered as a crowd gathered, phones raised like silent judges. "Hands where I can see them," an officer ordered. Malik complied, his thin wrists trembling as cold cuffs bit into his skin. The wallet was bagged like evidence in a crime drama. They took him to the precinct, the smell of bleach and stale coffee greeting him like a slap. Behind the desk sat Officer Carla Nguyen, sharp-eyed, deliberate, and clearly familiar with Edward. Her questions were clipped, her tone tilted toward disbelief. "Where were you before you found the wallet?" she asked, tapping her pen. "I was just walking. I saw it on the ground." She didn't write that down. Edward loomed behind her, arms crossed. "Don't waste time, officer. Kids like this don't change. Make sure he learns a lesson." The balance was absurd. A homeless teenager against a billionaire's word. Malik swallowed hard, but he didn't drop his gaze. Edward leaned in, voice low and sharp. "You'll pay for this." The words felt less like a threat and more like a verdict. The cell was small, 3 steps from wall to wall, paint peeling in tired flakes, the air heavy with the scent of damp concrete. Malik sat on the metal bench, arms wrapped around himself, the echo of Edward's words still ringing in his head. He'd expected at least one friendly face from the streets, someone to speak for him. But word traveled fast, and fear traveled faster. The few friends he had were nowhere to be found. They knew better than to get tangled in trouble that had a billionaire's fingerprints on it. By evening, local news picked up the story: teen thief caught, red-handed, outside fine dining hotspot. A grainy photo of Malik in cuffs filled the screen, the headline sealing a judgment before any trial could. Officer Carla Nguyen stopped by his cell holding a clipboard. "Your statement's not here," she said flatly. Maybe you never gave one. I told you I found the wallet, Malik said, voice tight. She shrugged. Can't help you if it's not in the file. Later, a shadow appeared at the cell door. The man's voice was low, his tone edged with menace. Drop it, kid. Don't make this worse. Sometimes staying quiet is the only way to survive. The message was clear: stop fighting or get buried. Malik lay back against the cold wall, staring at the cracked ceiling, his isolation closing in like a noose. The next morning, Malik woke to the sound of boots echoing down the corridor. Officer Nguyen slid a folded newspaper through the bars, without a word. On the front page, teen repeat. Offender caught again. City's patience wearing thin. Beneath the headline was his face lit by the harsh flash of an arrest photo from months ago when he'd been mistaken for another boy during a shoplifting spree. The charges had been dropped, but that detail was missing. The article painted him as a serial thief, a predator of the streets. The source A, close associate of Mr. Edward Langley. Malik's stomach twisted. It wasn't enough for Edward to accuse him. Now the story was being rewritten entirely. Evidence of his innocence seemed to vanish overnight. The witness list shrank. His recorded statement remained unavailable, and the security cameras from the street corner were suddenly under maintenance during the time in question. By afternoon, the guards avoided eye contact, muttering about troublemakers. Malik sat on the bench, knees to his chest, the humiliation burning deeper than the hunger in his belly. The cell felt smaller than ever. For the first time, the thought crept in. Maybe they were right. Maybe justice wasn't for people like him. And in that cold, silent moment, Malik's hope thinned to a thread, ready to snap. Late that night, the door to Malik's cell clanged open. It wasn't Officer Nguyen. It was a woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled into a bun, a restaurant badge pinned to her blouse. I'm Sofia Delgado, she said gently. I manage the place where this all happened. Malik sat up wary. You here to say I stole it too? She shook her head. No. I came because something doesn't add up. We have security cameras and I've reviewed the footage. Her voice carried a quiet conviction. You didn't take that wallet, you picked it up. The next morning, Sofia stood in front of Edward Langley in his glass-walled office. You need to see this, she told him, placing a laptop on the desk. The video played Malik bending to pick up the wallet, glancing toward the door as if searching for its owner. No slipping it into a pocket, no sneaky moves. Edward's jaw tightened. This doesn't look like theft. It's not, Sofia said simply. News traveled fast. Social media lit up with the footage, strangers debating in comment threads, calling out the rush to judgment. The pressure mounted. By afternoon, Officer Nguyen unlocked Malik's cell. Charges are dropped, she said curtly. Edward appeared behind her, looking almost human without his usual steel. I may have been wrong, he admitted. It wasn't an embrace, but it was a crack in the wall between them. For the first time in days, Malik stepped into open air. It felt like a small win, but the fight wasn't over. By the next morning, the video had gone viral. It wasn't just the clean footage. It was Malik's expression frozen in a frame where he glanced toward the restaurant door, wallet in hand, uncertainty in his eyes. People saw more than a boy in ragged clothes. They saw a moment of truth, unfiltered and undeniable. Edward Langley sat in his study, scrolling through article after article. Headlines shifted, billionaire's accusation proven, false homeless teen vindicated. Comment sections were brutal toward him, questioning how quickly he had judged. Social media lit up with other stories. A college student posted about being accused of shoplifting a phone she had just found. A father recalled how his son was arrested for looking suspicious in the wrong neighborhood. The pattern was too clear to ignore poverty and skin color shaping assumptions before facts. Sofia Delgado gave a statement to a local news crew. It's not about charity, it's about truth. This boy didn't steal. By evening, Edward requested to meet Malik in person, not in a cell, not under suspicion. They sat in the restaurant's quiet back room. I saw the footage, Edward said, his voice measured. You were telling the truth all along. Malik nodded, eyes steady. I was. For the first time, Edward saw him not as a street kid, but as a person. Edward Langley did more than apologize. He made an offer. I can't change what I did, he told Malik, but I can change what happens next. Come live with me. Finish school. You deserve a fair shot. Malik hesitated. Life had taught him that generosity often came with strings. But Sofia's nod, warm and reassuring, pushed him toward a yes. Weeks later, Malik was living in a guest room bigger than any space he'd ever called his own. A bed with fresh sheets, 3 meals a day, a desk where he could actually do homework without worrying about the weather. Yet the scars didn't fade so quickly. The noise of handcuffs clicking shut still jolted him awake at night. He missed the rough comfort of street friends who no longer reached out, afraid maybe of the man he now lived with. And he carried the weight of knowing that without Sofia, the truth might have died in silence. Justice had been served, but only partially. The wound had closed, but the ache remained, a reminder that winning back dignity doesn't erase the cost of losing it. Malik began to imagine a different mission helping others like him before they became headlines. Quietly, without speeches or cameras, he started planning. The ripple effects didn't stop with Malik's freedom. The video became a teaching tool in community centers, sparking conversations about bias, fairness, and the danger of snap judgments. A local advocacy group launched a petition calling for mandatory bias training for police and private security staff. Within months, the city council passed a measure requiring it. News stations followed the progress, often mentioning Malik's case as the catalyst. Edward, for his part, funded a scholarship program for homeless youth, quietly placing Malik's name on the founding plaque. Malik attended the ceremony but kept to the side, uncomfortable with the cameras. He found more satisfaction in smaller acts, speaking at a shelter without reporters present, handing out supplies on cold nights, tutoring kids who'd missed school. He didn't want fame. He wanted change that lasted beyond a headline. One crisp autumn morning, Malik swept the front steps of the shelter, pausing to watch a group of children kicking a worn soccer ball in the street. The wind carried their laughter toward him, warm and unguarded. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to smile, not because everything was fixed, but because something had begun. If Malik's journey touched you, there's more you need to see. I've prepared another powerful story waiting for you on the screen. Click it and keep this conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free, and it tells me these stories matter to you. And in the comments, tell me what part of Malik's story stayed with you the most. Your voice keeps these stories alive.